So hi and welcome to this webinar where we are going to be talking about resilience. I've been tested over the last 24 hours, 48 hours with some certain conversations with clients. So resilience is definitely going to play a massive part over the next weeks, months for our plans as individuals, as businesses and the environment that we surround ourselves in. So today, again, we've got Jonathan Leaf on the webinar and we've got Liam Bateman from Silverchip. And Jonathan's going to lead us through some points. He's going to question us around certain areas of where we see needing help with resilience and trying to understand what that looks like. So yeah, hi guys. Hi Jonathan, how are you?
Good morning. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, hi Liam.
Hi guys.
Hi. So yeah, Jonathan, are you okay to, I suppose, start running us through?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm always, as you know, the time that we've been working together, Sean, my default position is resilience. I think if you can get personally resilient, that's the good start point. And then obviously if you can get business resilience, you've got the boat, you basically become indestructible in so many different ways. I mean, you get to a point where you start to make your own luck. You know, the more you work at this sort of stuff, the luckier you become. And I think it's a skill, being resilient. I don't think you're born with it. I think some take to it much more easily than others, but absolute resilience is the key to long-term success. And it doesn't matter where you are with your career or business. It's worthwhile reminding yourself, sort of like every day, every week, every month, that you need to be resilient and what you need to do to be resilient. I'm really pleased we've got Liam on as well, because we've now sort of got we span 3 decades, and of course we're all from different eras and we're at different stages in our careers as well. So I think that's going to be really useful to see what techniques we all use to become more resilient. I mean, so starting with you, Sean, I mean, obviously I remember when we first met, I mean, I didn't think you weren't resilient, but it was almost like your resilience was weaker because you looked almost like a week ahead or 2 weeks ahead, and you couldn't see the wood for the trees. Sometimes everything was a bit close. Do you want to just sort of like out of it?
Yeah, I think the resilience 2 years ago. So I know from the previous webinar we were talking about the 2-year journey that we've been on, but you know, at the start of our journey together, that there was resilience there. Don't get me wrong. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a business, would you? But
no.
I think the stress that comes with running an agency, the stress of, you know, growing that agency, I think that's the part that you don't understand, and how to create that resilience. Like you say, it's something you've got to learn, and I've definitely learned that, you know, through yourself and being positive every time, try and make a positive out of every negative. I'm even telling that to my parents now. But yeah, it's been an arduous journey along that 2 years as well. There's been points where you question what you're doing again at the same time. Even the last 48 hours, sorry, we've had a client where we've decided to part ways, and just wish him all the best, even though some of the conversations weren't fantastic. But at the end of the day, you know, you just wish the best for everyone and keep moving forward.
Picking up on that, Sean, is there one thing sort of in the last 12, 18, 24 months that you can put your finger on and say, yeah, that was the realization of a different source of resilience, where you could clear your head and you can see things more clearly, and that just brought in some resilience?
Yeah, I mean, I know I touched on it on the last webinar. The culture book has definitely helped us, you know, understand what the agency should be, so that you're aware of where, you know, the direction that you're heading in. The retained partnerships that we have with clients instead of project work has allowed me to be a lot less stressed, has built that resilience. So there is key decisions you make and key processes you'll put into your agency that will allow you to become more resilient and understand it better. Does that make sense?
I mean, the four things that I sort of like have learned over my career is, and what I keep relying on, and I have to keep reminding myself sometimes as well, because actually you're allowed to feel bad. You know, that's the thing. You are allowed to sort of have a bit of a meltdown, because actually if you haven't experienced that, then you can't experience the other side as well. So you have to be available. Otherwise you just become a sociopath, you know, that someone who actually is non-feeling, is just can't feel empathy or show empathy. I think it's actually good to have those sort of like varying emotions. Otherwise you're automated. I mean, the 4 things that I've learned, it'd be interesting to see what Liam's got to say, but I became ruthlessly optimistic, because what option is there? There isn't another option. Pessimism will only sort of like drive you down into a hole. And also the other thing is you've got to be patient, because you can't rush towards that end goal and that success because it takes time. Otherwise it just causes frustration. So you must be patient and find a sense of purpose in your life. Again, this has taken me a long time to do. Look after yourself. That sort of goes without saying. And the key really is just establish achievable goals. There's no point in just setting goals that you're just going to end up being disappointed, and that's not going to be helpful for anybody. So Liam, sort of like what have you done in your? I mean, you're still very young, phenomenally successful, and can you just tell us about a little bit about how you started and what age you and how do you feel about this?
I mean, obviously, I've been doing this now for 11 years as Silverchip, and I think when I started out, for probably the first as far as 6-7 years, I was quite a planner. So I planned for something to happen, and if it didn't happen, it would get me down. It wouldn't be a good result. It'd be quite negative. And then some stuff changed in terms of like you said, how you approach them kind of them hurdles in my mindset. And I think the biggest thing for me was like the fear of losing it. So the fear of losing the thing. So the longer it went on, the bigger the fear got. So the resilience got less the longer it went on. And then one day someone said something to me, and it was something along the lines of, you'll always be okay. And it was that notion that no matter what happens, no matter what client pulls, what project, what account we lose, what pitch we don't win, there'll always be another pitch, there'll always be another client, there'll always be another account. And that little phrase meant a huge amount basically to my outlook and approach going forward. So now when something bad happens, it's not, you're going to look at it, you're going to assess it, find out what went wrong, but it's a case of what can we learn from that and what happens next. And I'd say that switch only happened in the last 18 months, 2 years. And I think Jamie, my business partner, will probably say the same thing, that since that switch did happen, things have actually accelerated. So all the stuff we did in the first 8 years of our kind of career was great, but we've probably done more in the last 2 years, 18 months than we did in that first 8 years. And I think it all comes from that approach of we'll be okay. And
tomorrow will be a better day.
Yeah. And I know the other phrase was, it's one hot day doesn't make a summer. So one failure doesn't mean you're a failure, etc.
No, that's right. I mean, the thing about, I think blind optimism is very bad. Mm-hmm. I think measured optimism is very, very good, because there's no point in being just blind optimistic about stuff. You've got to sort of have a preparation and a plan in place to achieve that. I mean, you mentioned that bit of advice there. I actually remember a bit of advice, and I've told you about this, Sean, as well. There was, it was actually my golf coach. He was a mate of mine as well. I mean, I'm rubbish at golf, but he's still a mate. And 10 years ago, well, in the height of the last financial crisis, I was telling him, when we were playing golf together, how bad it was and how things. And he said, "You know what?" He said, "You've got a really good business, and cream always rises to the top. Don't worry." And actually, I stopped at that moment. I processed it and thought about it and say, "You're absolutely right." And I just got to work. Yeah. And lo and behold, we came out the last financial crisis absolutely flying, just because of a mindset change, and it was all to do with just that optimism and the patience, etc.
I just wanted, Jonathan, if I can, it was something Liam said there about, like, I suppose a light bulb moment or one phrase that somebody says to you, and this is kind of what helped us make the decision to partner with you 2 years ago. We went to a seminar with a guy called Chris Dorr, and he owns a company from California called The Future, and he was over doing this seminar, and you could ask a question before you got to the seminar. So I asked this question of, how do you create a positive agency culture? Because that was where I was feeling my pain points at the time. My question got voted to the top. So when we turned up at this seminar, I ended up being the focus of the whole seminar with the lead speaker and 150 creative professionals, agency owners. And he really, instead of answering the question, he said to me, well, why do you think you haven't got a positive agency culture? And he kept asking that question. And I kept giving him an answer, but not really answering the question. And then from the back of the room, because I know people like, you know, the use of the agency in Noir, didn't they, in Manchester, and that they were, you know, all of these guys were there. And somebody from the back of the room shouted, basically, you want everyone to be like you, don't you? And I sat there, and for about 10 seconds, everyone just looked at me, and I said, yeah. I said, I want everyone to have the same drive and passion. And then he said to me, he said, do you not think that's a bit unfair? He said, because if everyone was like you, everyone would have their own business. He said, so, and it was that point where I started to look at the team differently, try and look at people's skill sets differently, and not try and be as, you know, rushing things. Like you said, patience, just understand this is where he's at, this is where she's at, this is how they can benefit the business, and just have a bit more patience with people, really. So
yeah, there's a big realization, and there's of actually understanding. We've talked about this many times about your employees. I mean, obviously you have to mentor them to encourage their resilience as well, because they're human beings. They have the same fears and anxieties as we do. Just because we're leaders and business owners doesn't mean that we're any different to our team. And you've got to bear in mind that there's obviously two major categories of people who are either extrovert or introverts, and then there's variations along that as well. So everybody needs treating differently. You know, football managers will always know which of their players to put an arm around, which ones to kick, and which ones to shout at. You know, and that's like a key skill of a leader, isn't it? How do you find that with your team, Liam?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, much the same, really. Again, probably struggle with the same things that Sean's mentioned there. Looking at our team, and, you know, me and Jay in the early days were looking for people that were as driven in technology as us, that, you know, liked certain things and could fit into that, you know, culture. It wasn't a culture. We were just sort of spreading our own style over and over again. But in terms of the man management stuff you said there, again, yeah, 100%. You know, there's some people that I can say certain things to, and you'll get if someone's done something bad, they want to be told. There's certain people that might want it a bit more in a sense of, oh, next time you do this, do it this way. You know, man management is literally probably the most important skill that we have as leaders, to make sure we get the best out of our team.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But this is the resilience thing as well, isn't it? Because you can see, if you want to maximize and tune up your team to its maximum benefit, you've just got to work on their resilience. Because as you've just pointed out there, and this is really interesting, giving feedback. I heard a really interesting podcast. I can't remember the name of the fellow. I'll find it later. And he said, never give feedback, give feed forward, because feedback is generally negative. 95% of it is negative, and it's already happened. So actually give feed forward. What's the next thing that we're going to do? You can reference something that's happened in the past, but there's no, I've always said, I mean, I never criticized. There was no criticism in my business. It was always saying it's a collective. If something goes wrong, it's collective. You know, everybody is responsible for the whole position of the business. So I think this feed forward is really good, because it makes people more optimistic and more welcoming and less defensive and more welcoming to ideas, etc. So it's building their sort of resilience and confidence, because resilience is also very allied to confidence. So if you can give someone confidence in their abilities and positive beliefs in their abilities, you're giving them inbuilt resilience to their work as well. I mean, you'll find that with your team, Sean.
Yeah. Relating back to what Liam said there, my role now is to, I suppose, bring on the other directors with me, and then they bring on the team behind them. It's it's self-perpetuating, isn't it? If I come in with the face on, everybody's going to have the face on.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And said, you know, I remember I said there's we won't mention any names, but there's a couple of guys that, you know, come into your office, senior guys, and they walk in and they just like walk straight to their desk and sit down, and they don't say a word to anybody. You know, and I make it my point just to say good morning to everybody and go around and have a big smile on my face and just say good morning. You know, make sure that, you know, they know you're there.
Yeah.
It helps. I mean, obviously, some introverted people don't really like that. You know, they like to hiding in themselves. But that's a great idea.
Yeah. So I suppose the resilience around the environment that you put yourself in as well. It's looking at people that you either hire, you know, you've just mentioned, Liam, that you're taking somebody on. I think as your agency grows, you're not just bringing people on at the entry level, you are looking at senior people that you know are going to lead the team as well, aren't you?
Yeah, this is a truly, for us, well, it's a senior hire. It's an account director role. Again, in that, you know, clearly that person is not going to go to every pitch and win. What we don't want is somebody that's going to come back from a pitch that they've lost, and it's the end of the world. So resiliency in them kind of roles is obviously, it's quite black and white. It's quite clear because they've got very clear win and failures. Resiliency in the inner team, you know, nothing will ever go to plan, whether it's a development project, whether it's the simplest web build you could imagine, it will not go to plan. And I think that is, in an agency world, that is resiliency at any level, knowing that you will hit a hiccup, you will not have a certain password, you will not have certain access. You know, you will put some code in there that won't quite work first time. And it's how people learn to deal with that that's going to mean the success or failure of a project and ultimately of the agency in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I actually just on a point of actually running the agency and dealing with those sort of things is from a leadership perspective and a team perspective as well, is that anybody can run a business when you're going downhill, the sun's on your back and the wind's behind and the flowers are out and the phone's ringing and everyone's saying yes. Everybody can do that. That's easy. It's when you turn around and you have to start climbing uphill, the weather changes, it drops 20 degrees, you've got 4 layers of coats on, the rain is horizontal, you know, the wind is blowing at you in your face and the phone stops ringing, or if it does ring, it's complaints. And this is where you have to really, really dig deep, and you've got to know when that's happening, and you've got to know when to put in get your inner strength out and really sort of like face those things rather than hiding from them. I mean, that is the real crux of the matter, I think, in the greatest businesses, is that they demonstrate resilience completely, you know, from start to finish. And whatever happens, whether it's good times or bad times, they still talk the same way. It's incredible to see that. And that's happening a lot at the moment.
I would just ask you, Jonathan, I know you mentioned before we started, you know, COVID and the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months for agency owners and in agency life, it's going to be a roller coaster. So what areas of resilience do you think, you know, individuals, leaders are going to be calling on?
Well, expect the unexpected, embrace it. You know, that's the thing. There's no point in saying, well, I didn't expect that, I'm not happy about that. You know, you've just got to expect the unexpected. And if you think that we're actually on a roller coaster at the moment, we haven't even got on it yet. You know, I just think that the roller coaster started to get built in front of us, but we actually haven't got in the little car yet, which is going to take us up to the top and then drop us off. So, but that's, to be honest, that's the fun part of owning a business and running a business and having a team and just thinking, all right, the responsibility, yes, it's on your shoulders, but that's the fun part. You know, this is the time where you've got the opportunity to reimagine pretty much everything that you thought was part of your business. You know, is this developing the problems solving skills, you know, never stop learning, embracing change, all of those sort of things, is that you've just got, that's at the core of being a resilient person. And then that translates very, very easy into becoming a resilient business.
Frankly, we saw this early on in the when all this kicked off. There was literally 2 camps of people. There's the people that went into planning mode to figure stuff out, and there's the people that were like, the whole world's going to end and this is it, it's over, it's a disaster. And what you tended to find was a good 3 or 4 weeks later, then people were then planning, but by that point they were 4 weeks behind everybody else. They'd probably sent their team into you know, into overthinking mode because their leader was
absent
was absent and saying the world's going to end. And then you've got the other teams that, you know, that were making do, basically. Like, you know, clearly nobody is you know, maybe we're getting to that point now, but nobody was as productive in them first few weeks as they would have been the weeks before. But that's okay. Like that was out of everyone's control.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just, just talking generally rather than this specific thing at the moment, which we'll get back onto. I think it's almost like if you go back and throughout your life and what you need to do to develop these sort of like core resilience skills, I put it down to three things. You know, it's developing that positive, strong social network, because the one thing you do not want to be surrounded by is energy vampires. I've talked to Sean about this a lot, because the energy vampires, they're the ones that strip away at you. And we all know who they are, by the way, and we'll all have a few that we've all kissed a few frogs. But if you surround yourself with positive people with the same attitude and the same goals, they can be very different people. Of course, then you want them to be different people, but as long as they've got the same core principle and attitude of optimism and rolling forward and moving forward, then you won't go far wrong. You know, getting rid of the energy vampires will save you a lot of trouble.
Huge.
Sure. Can you name any interesting energy vampires that you've come across, Sean or Liam?
Oh, I can't say that live on YouTube.
I got plenty of them. And again, they were around until about 3-4 years ago. And it's mainly, if I'm honest, most of the hard ones are in friends and family. So the friends and family that are not in the same mindset of what they're trying to do with life as such. So, you know, school friends that are not interested in me working on a Saturday or in an evening and would much prefer to go out or do something. And they're the worst kind, because they're the ones that are hardest to get rid of. If you just met someone in a networking event and you see that, you know, they're quite negative, you can just walk away. But the friends and family ones are the particular hard ones. And it's always a cycle. They go through that kind of vampire phase, and then at some point in the future, they become like the fan phase of like, oh, how did you do that? How have you got to this stage? Like, you know, how are you employing that many people?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many of them, but that's a really, really important point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, I have learned to be very resilient and very optimistic. Because obviously, I support a football team called Hull City, and I can tell you, I've learned to be very resilient about all of that. We've had some terrible downs, and we've had some amazing highs. But you know, that's the same. It's a good analogy, isn't it, with football, sporting events. I mean, I was in a band for the first 4 years of my career, you know, traveling up and down the UK and Europe. And I had to become incredibly resilient, because sometimes literally we played to 1,000 people. And then within 3 days, I remember we played at the London Clappo 101 Club, and there was 10 people there, you know, for a concert on a Thursday night. And what was worse, we were on a percentage of the door. So, you know, but we still got up on the stage and played, you know, did a full set in front of 10 people and a dog, probably, I don't know. But it was almost like Bad News Tours, but that sort of gave me resilience. I mean, because at the end of this, we used that as a practice, a really good practice, really got into it and did the best job we possibly could. And then the other resilience, where you turn up and played a concert and you were absolutely terrible. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, but actually you went down well. And other times you played perfectly and the audience hated you, you know. So you just got to have that sort of like laissez-faire, easy come, easy go attitude to certain things, you know. And this is, I also think it's really important for a human being to challenge themselves as well, to do things that literally take themselves out their comfort zone, because then you get an extra bit of resilience again, you know. So if you're frightened of something, then, you know, feel the fear and go for it.
I watched it.
Go on, Sean.
I was just going to say, I watched a podcast. Well, it's the two Bobs, Blair Enns, and I can't remember the other guy's name actually, but global thought leaders, you know, really, you know their stuff. And they did a webinar the other night, and only, I think it was 10 people turned up to the webinar. Now, that's still good because it's a focused audience. And I think something like even having resilience to run things like these webinars and just go live with your brand and what you're trying to achieve. I've definitely had to jump hurdles over my own mental barriers to try and get to this point, and then the next point, and then the next point. So it's just, don't be worried about anything that's put in front of you, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned, you referenced the sports element there. I think that's huge, because just like anything, this resilience thing is not There's no magic bullet, I don't think. It's just something that you do over and over again, and it gets easier and easier as time goes on. And if you're involved in sport from a young age, for example, you're going to have lost, you're going to lose, you're going to have bad games. And that resilience just to carry on playing is going to add to that resilience bank. That's going to mean that you're going to be more, I'm going to stop saying resilience in a second, but more resilient person when you're older. And I always think that the gym and sports is a great metaphor for business and for life, because you set a goal, you go after that goal, you might achieve it, you might not, but if you don't, you're going to do it again in 3 or 4 weeks, or so on, basically. And the only thing that's going to get you to that goal is consistency and having a plan.
Yeah. It was funny actually on LinkedIn. I follow a fitness guy on LinkedIn, and he said, don't get on the scales every day because you'll just disappoint yourself. He said, get a calendar, and on every day that you achieve your calorie goal or whatever that might be, put a big red circle, and on the days that you don't achieve it, put a black X. And then over that 30 days, that's when you'll decide, when you'll find out, what kind of type of journey you're on. You're either failing every day or you're achieving that long-term goal. Yeah.
So resilience just becomes like a habit rather than
absolutely right. It is, and it's one of those sort of things that you really have to study and work at. You can't. It just doesn't come along on its own. I mean, I just had some other descriptions of the energy of vampires. They are pessimists. They're impatient. They're glass half empties. I mean, the sooner you get rid of those sort of peoples around you, then your attitude will change completely. I mean, I remember in my business career, if something went wrong in the business, and it happens, we all know it happens, and fortunately not too often, but when it did, I took time just to sort of swear a lot and just like go around and metaphorically kicking things. But within half an hour, that was gone. And suddenly I said, right, okay, where's the opportunity in this? This has happened. We know that. It's too late to do anything about it. What are the opportunities? And we used to stay there until we found an opportunity. And 9 times out of 10, we always came out of a downslide, whatever it is, on the other side better, just because we really worked on it, and that is building deep resilience. I mean, if we move sort of like the conversation a little bit on from personal resilience, because I think it's important to put this, it's really, really important. I can't stress how important it is that the leaders of a business actually do have to just constantly work on their personal resilience and mentor their team so they're resilient as well. But building business resilience is a different matter. Now, I mean, Sean and I have worked on this now, and we've got Sean's business in a really, really good position. There's no question about it. Well, he's done it. I've just helped him. Well, him and the team. But I went to a event about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and there was a chap that I really respect, a chap called Andrew Horncastle, and he said his business really took a massive downturn, and he sort of took himself away to read a lot of books, and he said he came back and said, what I'm going to do in the future is I'm going to collect rent. And what he meant by that, he was going to build a business that was so predictable that he could almost like just open the doors and the rent would flood in. I mean, he actually is in property, so he was being quite literal about it. But I thought the metaphor was very interesting. So what I said to the guys back in Strawberry, I mean, it was probably maybe a decade ago, I said, on January the 1st, we have got to know pretty much 70% of our revenue. If we do that, then we know that the other 30% of revenue is going to come in. We just know, because it has always done that. And then we'll top up on that, because there'll be new opportunities that we don't know about yet. And lo and behold, in two years, we'd gone from sort of like really being project-based to sort of like being retainer-based and long-term value based as well. So it absolutely transformed the business and allowed us to go from $1 million to 1.5 to 2 million pretty quickly, just by inherently building that level of resilience into the actual business model as well. You've got something to say about it, Sean? I know you have. Yeah.
No, I'm just going to say there's Andrew Wolf who's watching the webinar. He's just put, and I've never heard this before, but he put, if Tiger Woods hits a bad shot, he thinks about it for 4 paces and then gets over it. Right. That's spot on, isn't it? So, sorry, what was your question, Jonathan? I sidetracked myself.
No, it's just sort of like on the business resilience. how we replanned Red-Fern's revenue streams.
Yeah, I think this happened yesterday. So we've been looking to try and work with an IT company that we know we can add value to. For the last 2 years, I've really been engaging with him on LinkedIn, and he reached out to me last week. So we had a video call yesterday, and he wants 2 websites. He wants to, raise the level of his brand and the tone of voice and the message that his company's giving out there. So we went through what we can do, how we know what our process looks like. And then at the end of it, I said, the only way that we can deliver these types of growth strategies as partners is on a retained partnership. Are you open to that? And he said, I don't know. I said, we need to look at what the pricing is. I said, if we look at it from a project perspective, we're never going to walk alongside each other long enough to understand what that growth looks like. So, I suppose what I'm trying to get at there is the resilience and the conviction in, we've gone on this journey for 2 years, and every conversation we have now is about building a partnership. I'm not interested. I'm not saying I'm not interested, but the project-based side of things just doesn't enter my head now in any conversation I have with a business. It's all about partnerships and growing together.
Yeah.
What about you, Liam?
Much the same. Like, we've not done project work for a long time now. We were probably a bit more fortunate in the sense that we always set out to create complex products that inherently you couldn't just build for a month and then disappear. They needed to be iterated upon, over many years to get the best out of them. So that's one thing. But in terms of structural business resiliency, it all comes down to finances ultimately, whether that's generating a consistent amount of revenue, or having a consistent amount of reserves. Me and Jay always had a phrase that every end of the year that we sit down and look at how we did, and when we were getting a bit, we might get a bit giddy that we've had a good year or whatever it was, and our phrase was always that there will be a bad year, so we made sure that we had good reserves in place and have good reserves in place, which means that if something bad happens, and we're not just talking about what's happening now, I'll give you an example of one that I think that I look back on now and think, how did we get through that? But we had a huge client that was way too big for us at the time, and they were about to give us 50% of our projects, or an account that was 50% of our revenue for the whole year. We were due to start on the Monday on the main project. On the Friday afternoon, we got a phone call saying that the person that signed it off didn't have authority to sign it off, and we'd scheduled the whole team for 3 months from that Monday, and it was all just gone in a 5-minute phone call. And we had 2 options there, really. It was kind of like the disaster planning, but thankfully, because we had the reserves, we could take a step back, deal with the fact that had happened, what mistakes we made, contract stuff like that, but then we could hit the ground on Monday and go, right, cool, we can now focus on training for 3-4 weeks while we go and find the other clients that we need to bring forward. So having that structural financial reserves in place, whether that's via retainers or actual cash or whatever it is, allows you to make them decisions when things do go wrong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's never a disaster then, is it? You've actually pulled the rabbit out the hat. You've turned a massive negative into a huge positive.
Yeah,
and also you'll never do that again. That's
absolutely. It was a huge lesson. But what that did actually do was we had 2 options with a particular client, and that was, we could have turned around and started the whole legal stuff, whatever it was, with this particular client. But we knew that the person we were talking to hadn't done anything wrong. It was above their head that this company was a farce, basically. But the person we actually spoke to, we sent some flowers to, because she was clearly distressed that she'd done this to our situation as well. And we could do that because we weren't in a position of panic and sort of anger. And what actually happened from that is that lady moved on to another company, and has since become one of our biggest accounts. So that ability to be resilient in that moment, rather than kind of lash out and sort of throw the towel in, has resulted through having the structural constraints of a resilient agency, has actually delivered us one of our best clients right now. This is 4 or 5 years later.
Well, it's exactly right, because I mean, you've just taken the perfect approach, because yes, it's good to have sort of like the resilience of the business is cash in the bank as well, of course. I mean, that just gives you sort of like comfort, but actually just thinking the long term. And I think we a lot of agencies are very, very guilty of thinking in the short term and thinking actually the next month invoices is the most important month. It's not. You know, it's you've got to be thinking 12 months ahead, 24 months ahead, 5 years. You know, so the long term plan is the one that matters the most. The short term, that's the strategy. The short term stuff is the tactics. You know, but the battle plan, the war plan, if you like, is the 5-year strategy, and the battle plans are much shorter term.
I was just going to say is, you know, the people that are watching, if they do want to ask any questions, you know, we've got the Q&A open, and I hope Liam doesn't mind me asking this question, because there was a point, I think you had an article published on Prolific North quite a while ago, didn't you? Where you showed, you know, a massive amount of resilience and talked about at a certain point in your journey, and you nearly gave up the whole agency life, didn't you, at one point? What was?
So this was back in the early days, where I think it's about 2013. So we're about kind of 4 years onto our journey, and things weren't going great. But we weren't planning. We got a bit naive, but basically we got a bit sort of, I always refer to it as big for our boots. The sort of the accolades externally were kind of rolling in as we were doing well, and then one day we sat down to look at the actual finances, and they weren't good. And my logic at the time was, you know, I'm a developer, so I was getting offers left, right, and centre to go and join, you know, different agencies around the world at the time. And my logic was pretty much like, why am I doing this? I'll just leave. It's an easier life to go and be CTO, tech director, or whatever it is, with somebody else. And that all came about because there was absolutely no resilience at that time that I had. And it was the first major hurdle that we'd had. Because up until that point, things had been sort of, I won't say swimmingly, but swimmingly in the grand scheme of things. And we hit a big roadblock where all we needed to do was, you know, go step back and go, hang on a second, we've messed up, we can fix this, we just need to put these processes in place and deal with it. My first reaction was to run away, and that actually happened. We actually shut everything down, and then I remember where I went for a walk basically, and I'd calmed down by this point as to what was happening over this sort of week or two, and I just rang Jamie and I just said, listen, what are we going to do? There's no way that we're gonna stop now. I said, I think we've been rash. I think we've made the wrong decision. And he agreed within milliseconds. We were all from the same page. But my resilience wasn't there. My resilience to a problem didn't exist. And it nearly resulted in me permanently walking away.
Yeah. Interesting. You mentioned something there which really resonates actually, Liam, is it helps if you've got someone to talk to. And again, someone on your level who really understands it. Of course, you can go and talk to your friends or your family, but if they're not actually involved in the business or don't really understand what the pressure points are or the pain is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is going to be a complete selfish plug here, but this is sort of what I do. You know, it's that sounding board, and just a calm voice in someone's ear sometimes, and you know, talking about stuff with someone on the same level as you really, really helps just to sort of like put things into perspective. So, I mean, even if it's just someone else in another business, for example, you know, one of your competitors ring them and it's like, I'm going through this, I'm having issues. What do you think? You know, in all honesty, I think we're all in it together, more so than ever before at the moment. But what do you say to that, Sean, after my
plug? No, I agree. It was actually one of our staff who took us to that seminar where the guy, you know, spoke to me and really resonated with me. Then we met you, and it was just, I think that it resonates same with what Liam said there. You know, we've been an agency for 15 years now, but it's probably only the last 2-3 years that have really made a difference in finances and in personal journey. But yeah, just surround yourself with, I would say, similar people, if I'm being honest, because you'll just drive each other forward. I know you always mention that when you go to the train station, you might pick a fishing book up because you don't do fishing, just to read it. I mean, that's not something I normally do, but yeah, to take yourself out of your comfort zone. But
yeah, that's always been a thing that I've done. Is I try and do a challenge or 2 challenges every year that just take me out of my comfort zone, just to give me the extra confidence that I can do anything. You know, what about you, Liam? What's your final words of wisdom on this matter?
Just in general, just like I say, it's a habit that you form by doing, and it's that's got to start off with a conscious decision that when something bad happens, you ask the question of, right, cool, what can I do about this now, and accepting what's not in your control and what is. And as soon as you do that, it becomes subconscious, and before you know it, there's no slump period. You just react to whatever's happening.
Yeah, so Sean, have you got any final comments while we so we can wrap it?
Well, we've had a question come through, so from Graham Stevenson. So due to the current stage we're at with C19, do you think there'll be reduced client demand for the longer term? Big battle category of building sorry, I'm reading this a bit rubbish, aren't I? Category of brand building and marketing services, and that generally upcoming activity will be more focused on the quick win activation category by default, not by choice, due to the market's increasing price sensitivity until cash flows revive. That is a very detailed question, so I hope I read that well enough.
Yeah, can I take that? I'll take that one on. And I think the answer is yes, maybe, and no. I think it all depends on who you're talking to, and I think that the secret is when you look at your client base and who you're dealing with, find out which camp they're in. So the obvious one is there's going to be three basic categories of businesses moving forward. Ones that are going to really thrive through this because they're at the cutting edge, the digital, they're doing X, Y, Z. You know, they're in a growing business, a business that everybody wants and needs. There's another category which is one that's just bumbling along, will be the same, won't really change very much. And there were ones that are really struggling, you know, obviously like the hospitality or the travel, for example, for the time being, where they might want instant gratification. But I think if you carefully choose, I mean, this is something that we talk about all the time, isn't it, Sean? You very, very carefully choose the businesses that you work for, the businesses you work with. You can sort of control that a little bit, really. Then what do you think, Sean? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, no, I think it aligns with what strategy we've put in place. You know, it might be a bit cutthroat, but categorize your clients that you've got and concentrate on the ones that you know are going to make you fly when you come out the other side of, you know, if this is relating to COVID, obviously. Yeah, just category, you know, it might be a bit ruthless, but it doesn't mean you cut the clients off that are in the category C. You just need to make sure that, you know, you do focus what you're doing.
Exactly. You don't want all your clients in category C.
No, exactly.
You've got to have the mix. What about you, Liam?
What you guys have said, bang on. One other thing I will add, though, is that, you know, whether you believe it's the universe, religion, whatever, if you believe that to be the case there, you will attract that. If you go looking for that, you go into a meeting with a client and expect that they're going to ask for a quick win, you know, that's going to happen. You need to understand what it is that what it is you're selling, what services you're providing, and what value you can add, and then deliver that. And if somebody wants that, great. If they don't get distracted by them shiny pennies. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, we're on 45 minutes, so I think we touched on some. I'm coming out of this webinar feeling a bit better anyway than I came into it, because I had to show some resilience over the last 48 hours. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say we should go down the pub now, but we can't.
Oh,
nice. No. Well, thanks, Liam. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for watching, guys.
I'll catch up with you again soon. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.